Thank you very much for accepting
Pleasure.
to speak here for the French television Télé Sud and for the New York Forum. So, what is your first impression after 1.5 days of talks here? Was it a good idea to hold such a forum here rather than in some usual place as Davos, for instance?
Much better to have it in Gabon. Davos is familiar, predictable. I think you often know what people are going to say. I think to come here is to open people's minds and their eyes and their ears, not just to a new continent for many people. I know many people who have been visiting and working in Africa before, as I have myself, but others have not. And I think that what you've had in this forum is a very good mixture of business practitioners, policy makers, analysts, those with insights, and individuals who just bring a certain a mixture of both idealism and practicality. And that's how I think you should approach Africa. Idealism, but practicality. It's got so much to offer, but it also has constraints, and we have to be realistic about those.
What's your experience about Africa?
Well, I ran away from home at the age of 17, 18 to Africa. I didn't want to go straight to university. I had a place at university at Oxford, and I didn't want to go. I wanted to go to Africa. And I had to move heaven and earth to get to where I wanted to be, which was in Tanzania in East Africa. And eventually a wonderful man, a bishop in London who had been working previously, first in South Africa, but had been expelled for his anti-apartheid activities, but had then gone to Tanzania and been a bishop there. I didn't know him, but I heard him on the radio. I rang him up and I said, "Will you help me go to Africa? Will you help me go and work and live in Tanzania?" And he did, and I've not looked back. And then when I was Trade Commissioner for the European Union, of course, I had a lot to do in Africa. I loved it. Very frustrating, very hard work to negotiate trade in Africa, but nonetheless very fulfilling.
And this early experience in Tanzania, did it affect the way you think about Africa now? Because Africa has evolved or not?
I think it sort of got into my body, into my bloodstream, and it's never left. I mean, look, you feel inspired by Africa, but also daunted, challenged by Africa. I mean, the physical problems are so great. The challenges of development are so many. Now, why, however, am I positive? Why am I optimistic? And it is for this reason. African governments, African people, business people, policymakers, politicians, I think are looking at their own countries and their own continent with a different frame of mind. They're looking at Africa in a different way. They're not looking at Africa or their countries as something that has to go, with a bowl or a hat, asking donor countries to give generously to Africa. Aid is very important. It's done so much to attack HIV/AIDS, malaria, and other really major health problems. But I don't believe that aid and the donor countries create economic growth. They don't create business and jobs. That requires a different attitude of mind. You have to look to the enterprising, to the more entrepreneurial, but also in the global economy in which we live, you don't do it by yourself. You need to be integrated progressively to an international economy for trade, for investment, for the exchange of technologies and skills. To imagine that you can just, transform yourself by yourself without working with other businesses and other people from other countries is an illusion. And in my view, what I've seen in Africa over the last 10 years is the development, is the emergence of a more entrepreneurial frame of mind. As I say, looking to Africa, to itself, to their own capabilities for solutions, yes, but being more open-minded and international about the other people and businesses with whom they can make and create their own progress.
Yeah, have you seen also better governments?
Yes, I've seen some pretty bad governments as well, you know, truthfully. But we now have more countries in Africa than ever before which are democratic. When I first came to Africa, when I was a boy, democracy was not really known. And before, 1989, there were probably about 3 or 4 democracies, countries that you could call a democracy. Now there are more than 20, between 20 and 30. Well, there are other countries which have to find democracy, but my view is that as incomes rise, the pressure and demand for democracy grows, and I think conflict and violence falls as people become better off. And that's the trajectory. Africa as a continent, if I can generalize in that way, that's the trajectory that Africa is on. And in my view, in 10, 20 years' time, we will be seeing a number of African countries and economies challenging Asia for mass production and lower cost manufacturing. But if that's going to happen in 10 to 20 years' time, then they have to start making the changes now, both in governance and the quality of governance, and in creating the necessary environment for business. It's one thing leaders in Africa having a vision, but they also have to create the means, the systems of delivering change, of real change in their countries and their economies. And if they keep going in that direction, I believe, as I say, Africa will be the new challenger to Asia, and I look forward to that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.